"Get out of here, you don't belong in first class, girl." Vanessa, the white flight attendant, said as the crack of the slap echoed through the first-class cabin like a gunshot. 10-year-old Jasmine Richardson's head snapped violently to the side as gasps rippled through the airplane. Her small hand flew to her cheek, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Above her stood a flight attendant, hands still raised in the air, face twisted with rage, red cranberry juice dripping down her pristine white uniform like blood. An overturned plastic cup lay on the floor. Jasmine's lips trembled. Tears began streaming down her face as the reality of what just occurred hit her. A grown woman, a flight attendant, someone who was supposed to protect her, had just struck her across the face. The other passengers stared in stunned silence. Some reached for their phones. Others looked away, uncomfortable witnesses to something that should never happen, 35,000 feet in the air. But what that flight attendant didn't know, what none of them knew, was that in exactly 5 minutes, her entire world would collapse. Because the little girl she just slapped? Her father wasn't just any concerned parent. He was someone that could destroy Vanessa's career pathway. And he was about to turn one moment of violence into a reckoning that would change an entire industry. But before we get to that, you need to understand how we got here. Because what happened on Flight 447 wasn't just about one slap. It was about something much darker, something that had been building from the moment Jasmine stepped onto that plane. If you stand against prejudice and racism, hit the subscribe button, type justice in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from. You will definitely get a response from Living Stories. So let me take you back to where it all began. Just 2 hours earlier, when a sweet 10-year-old girl boarded a plane alone for the very first time, excited and nervous, clutching her stuffed bunny, completely unaware that the worst day of her life was about to unfold. Jasmine Richardson stood at Gate B-17 in Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, her small hand gripping the strap of her backpack. At just 10 years old, she was about to board her first flight alone. Her backpack had her name, Jasmine, embroidered in purple thread, a gift from her grandmother, the same grandmother she was flying to visit in Chicago. Jasmine was a 4th-grade honor student who spent most of her free time reading books about animals and dreaming of becoming a veterinarian one day. She had 2 puff ponytails in her natural hair, decorated with bright pink bows that matched her favorite unicorn t-shirt. Over it, she wore a soft pink cardigan. And clutched tightly in her arms was Mr. Hopper's, a well-loved stuffed bunny that had been with her since she was 3. Around her neck hung a special lanyard, bright yellow with "unaccompanied minor" printed in bold letters. She kept checking it, making sure all her emergency contact information was still there. Her father's number, her grandmother's number, everything she might need. She was nervous, of course she was nervous, but she was also excited. Her father, Marcus Richardson, had business meetings in Chicago and couldn't fly with her, but he didn't want her to miss spring break with her grandmother and cousin. So he'd made a decision. He'd bought her a first-class ticket on Skyward Airlines Flight 447. Not because he wanted to spoil her, but because he believed first class meant better service, more attention, more supervision for his baby girl flying alone for the first time. He thought the extra money would guarantee his daughter's safety and comfort. He had no idea how wrong he was. For the past week, Jasmine had been practicing being brave, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, telling herself, "You're a big girl now. You can do this." Her father had gone over everything with her: how to talk to the flight attendants, how to use the call button, what to do in an emergency. She'd memorized it all because she wanted to make him proud. As the gate agent called for first-class boarding, Jasmine took a deep breath, squeezed Mr. Hopper's a little tighter, and walked down the jetway. Her heart pounded with a mix of nervousness and excitement. She was doing it. She was being brave. When she stepped onto the plane, she was greeted by a flight attendant standing at the entrance. The woman was in her mid-40s with perfectly styled blonde hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Her uniform was immaculate, crisp, and professional. Her makeup was flawless, and on her name tag it read, "Vanessa, 20 years of service." Vanessa's face wore a warm, welcoming smile. But the moment her eyes landed on Jasmine, something changed. The smile didn't exactly disappear, but it froze. Hardened. Her eyes traveled from Jasmine's face to her unaccompanied minor lanyard, to her backpack and back up again. "Ticket," Vanessa said. Not hello, not welcome aboard, just ticket. The warmth that had been in her voice seconds ago when greeting the passenger before Jasmine had completely vanished. Jasmine held out her boarding pass with a shy smile. "Hi ma'am, I'm Jasmine. I'm flying by myself to see my grandma." Vanessa took the ticket and stared at it. Then she looked at it again. Her eyebrows furrowed. She flipped it over as if checking for something. Then she looked at Jasmine with barely concealed skepticism. "Seat 3A?" Vanessa's tone suggested disbelief. "First class?" "Yes, ma'am," Jasmine said, her smile faltering slightly. "My daddy bought it for me." Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line. She muttered something under her breath, something that sounded like "how things have changed," and examined Jasmine's unaccompanied minor paperwork with the intensity of a border agent checking a suspicious passport. Behind Jasmine, other first-class passengers were boarding, and a line was beginning to form. Finally, Vanessa thrust the papers back at Jasmine, not handed, thrust, and said coldly, "Seat 3A is down there, window seat." No offer to help with her bag. No welcoming smile, nothing. Jasmine carefully made her way down the aisle, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, Mr. Hopper's tucked under one arm. She found seat 3A and struggled to lift her backpack into the overhead bin. It was heavy, and she was small. She stood on her tiptoes trying to push it up, her arms straining. Vanessa walked right past her without offering to help. But then, the family behind Jasmine boarded. The Hartfords, a white couple with 2 children, a boy and a girl, both around Jasmine's age. And suddenly, Vanessa transformed. "Welcome aboard." Vanessa's voice was bright, warm, dripping with friendliness. "Oh, let me help you with those bags. Here, let me get that for you." She effortlessly lifted their luggage into the overhead compartments. Then she leaned down to the children with a broad smile. "And how are you two doing today? Excited for your trip? Can I get you some juice, apple or orange?" The Hartford children giggled and said apple juice. Vanessa promised to bring it right away. Jasmine, still struggling with her backpack in the row in front of them, finally managed to shove it into the bin with one final push. She climbed into her seat by the window, breathing hard from the effort, and carefully placed Mr. Hopper's on her lap. She didn't understand what had just happened, but she felt it. The coldness. The difference. As she buckled her seatbelt, she heard voices from the front of the cabin. Seats 1A and 1B, right in the front row, were occupied by an elderly couple, George and Linda Patterson. They were well-dressed, the kind of people who looked like they flew first class regularly. George Patterson leaned toward his wife, but his voice carried through the quiet cabin. "I don't know why they let just anyone in first class now. Standards have really dropped." Linda Patterson nodded, glancing back toward Jasmine. "Times have certainly changed, not always for the better." Jasmine heard them. She didn't understand all of what they meant, but she knew they were talking about her. Her cheeks grew warm with embarrassment, and she hugged Mr. Hopper's tighter, sinking lower into her seat. In seat 2C, directly across the aisle from Jasmine, sat Richard Brennan, a business executive in an expensive suit, his laptop already out, his carry-on designer leather. He glanced at Jasmine, looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain, and muttered just loud enough to be heard, "Diversity quotas extending to airlines now, I see." A few passengers chuckled. Jasmine's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. She didn't know what diversity quotas meant, but she knew it was mean. She knew it was about her. The only kind face she saw was in seat 4A, a few rows behind her. A middle-aged white woman named Patricia Hayes gave Jasmine a warm, encouraging smile. But she said nothing. She didn't defend Jasmine. She just smiled and looked away. Jasmine turned toward the window, clutching Mr. Hopper's close to her chest. She tried to focus on the excitement of seeing her grandmother. She tried to remember her father's words that morning. "You're going to do great, baby girl. Just be yourself, be polite, and if you need anything, the flight attendants are there to help you." But as she sat there, feeling the cold stares and hearing the whispered comments, one thought kept running through her young mind. Why do they seem so angry that I'm here? She didn't understand that what she was experiencing had a name. Racism. The kind that doesn't always scream or wear hoods, The kind that hides behind polite smiles and professional uniforms. The kind that believes certain spaces, like first-class airplane cabins, belong to certain people. And a 10-year-old black girl wasn't one of them. In the galley area, Vanessa was preparing for takeoff alongside two other flight attendants. There was Jessica, a younger woman in her 20s, fresh-faced and eager to please, and Robert, an older man in his 50s who'd been flying for nearly as long as Vanessa. Jessica glanced toward Jasmine's seat with concern. "That little girl is the unaccompanied minor, right? Should we go check on her? Make sure she's settled in?" Vanessa barely looked up. "She's fine, old enough to sit still." "But protocol says we should." Jessica started. "I said she's fine." Vanessa cut her off sharply. "We have actual passengers to attend to." Robert nodded in agreement, a silent supporter of everything Vanessa wasn't saying out loud. Jessica bit her lip and said nothing more. She was too new, too junior, to push back against someone with 20 years of seniority. And so Jasmine sat alone in seat 3A. A little girl trying to be brave, completely unaware that the next 2 hours would change her life forever. What Jasmine didn't know, what none of them knew, was that her father, Marcus Richardson, wasn't just a concerned parent. He was one of the most powerful men in corporate America. And the very airline they were sitting in, he practically owned it. But before you hear about Marcus, I need you to understand something. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you or someone you know ever experienced discrimination like this? Because what happened to Jasmine happens every single day, in ways big and small, and it's time we talk about it. And if you want to see how this story unfolds, how a father's love became a force of reckoning, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next will have you on the edge of your seat. The plane was about to take off. And Jasmine Richardson's nightmare was just beginning. While Jasmine sat alone in seat 3A, trying to understand why she was being treated so differently, let me tell you about her father. 300 miles away in Chicago, Marcus Richardson stood at the head of a glass-walled boardroom on the 45th floor of a downtown skyscraper. At 38 years old, he was a striking figure, a black man in an impeccable custom-tailored navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His intelligent eyes scanned the faces of 20 executives seated around the massive conference table, all of them waiting for his next words. "The quarterly projections look solid," Marcus said, his voice carrying natural authority. "But I want to see a 15% increase in the tech sector investments by Q3. Make it happen." "Yes, Mr. Richardson," they responded in near unison. An assistant entered quietly, placing urgent documents in front of him. "Mr. Richardson, the board is waiting for your decision on the acquisition." Marcus nodded, signing off on what was likely a multi-million-dollar deal without even flinching. On the wall behind him, the title on the door read, "Marcus Richardson, CEO, Vanguard Equity Partners." This wasn't just any businessman. This was a man who controlled investment portfolios worth billions. A man whose decisions moved markets. A man who sat on the boards of a dozen major corporations, including, though most people didn't know it, Skyward Airlines. During a brief break, Marcus pulled out his phone and smiled. There was a text from an hour ago, from Jasmine. A simple airplane emoji followed by "Boarding now, Daddy, I'm being so brave." His heart swelled with pride as he typed back, "Be brave, B-girl. First class will take good care of you. Grandma's waiting." He had no reason to doubt it. He'd paid over $1,200 for that first-class ticket, specifically because he believed his daughter would be safer there. Better supervised, better cared for. He trusted that the premium he paid meant premium service for his little girl. He had absolutely no idea what was actually happening 35,000 feet above him. Back on Flight 447, the plane had reached cruising altitude and service was beginning. According to airline protocol, Vanessa was supposed to conduct a brief orientation with Jasmine. As the supervising flight attendant for an unaccompanied minor, she was required to explain how the call button worked, go over emergency procedures, and make sure Jasmine felt comfortable and safe. What actually happened was this. Vanessa appeared at Jasmine's seat for exactly 15 seconds, looked down at her with barely concealed annoyance, and said in a flat, cold voice, "If you need something, press the button, but try not to bother me." Then she turned on her heel and walked away before Jasmine could even respond. Immediately, Vanessa's entire demeanor transformed as she approached the Hartford family across the aisle. Her voice became warm, almost musical. "Good morning. How are we doing over here? Oh, you two are just adorable." She beamed at the Hartford children, a boy and girl, both white, both around Jasmine's age. "Would you like some cookies? How about coloring books? I have some fun activity packs. And let me bring you both some apple juice. Apple or orange?" "Apple," both children chorused. "Apple it is, coming right up." Vanessa practically sang. Jasmine watched this from her seat, her confusion growing. Why was the flight attendant so nice to those kids but so cold to her? The drink cart came through after about 20 minutes. Vanessa stopped at every row, asking passengers what they'd like, chatting warmly with the white passengers. When she reached George Patterson in 1A, her voice took on a tone of familiarity. "Mr. Patterson, your usual Scotch?" "Of course, right away, sir. So wonderful to see you flying with us again." "At Richard Brennan's seat." "Mr. Brennan, I thought that was you." "Let me get you comfortable. What can I bring you?" The cart approached Jasmine's row. She sat up a little straighter, ready to politely ask for something to drink like her father had taught her. Vanessa made eye contact with Jasmine for a brief second. Then she deliberately looked away and pushed the cart right past her seat without stopping. Jasmine's hand was half raised. Her mouth had been open, ready to speak. But Vanessa just kept walking. Confused, Jasmine lowered her hand. Maybe the flight attendant would come back. Maybe she just didn't see her. 20 minutes passed. Jasmine watched as other passengers received drinks, snacks, and warm towels. She waited patiently, not wanting to be a bother, but growing increasingly thirsty. Finally, she worked up the courage. When Vanessa walked past again, Jasmine raised her hand and said politely, "Excuse me, ma'am." Vanessa kept walking, didn't even pause. It was as if Jasmine hadn't spoken at all. Jasmine felt her cheeks grow warm. Had she done something wrong? She waited a few more minutes, then remembered what Vanessa had said about the call button. She reached up and pressed it. The little light above her seat turned on. She waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. She could see Vanessa at the front of the cabin, laughing with the Hartford parents, clearly not in any hurry. Finally, after 10 full minutes, Vanessa approached Jasmine's seat, but the warmth that had been in her voice with every other passenger was completely gone. "What?" she snapped. Jasmine flinched at the tone but tried to smile. "May I please have some apple juice like those kids have?" Vanessa's face hardened. "We only have a limited amount. It's for our regular passengers." Jasmine's smile faded. "But my daddy said first class has everything. He paid for my ticket." Vanessa's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Well, maybe your daddy should have flown with you then. Try water." She walked away before Jasmine could respond, leaving the little girl sitting there, confused and hurt, clutching Mr. Hopper's tighter than ever. And then things got worse. About 30 minutes into the flight, the Hartford children, who had been sitting relatively quietly, suddenly unbuckled their seatbelts and started running up and down the first-class aisle. They were playing tag, laughing loudly, their feet thundering on the carpet. "I'm gonna get you," the boy shouted, chasing his sister. "No, you won't," she squealed, dodging around seats. Vanessa emerged from the galley, and Jasmine expected her to tell the children to sit down. After all, wasn't running in the aisle dangerous? But instead, Vanessa laughed. "Oh, you two, such energy. Here, come here." She produced a bag of cookies from seemingly nowhere. "Have some more snacks. That should help with all that excitement." The children giggled and grabbed the cookies, then went right back to running. Meanwhile, Jasmine had simply shifted in her seat to get a better view out the window. She adjusted Mr. Hopper's on her lap and leaned slightly toward the glass to see the clouds below. "That child keeps moving around. It's distracting." George Patterson's voice cut through the cabin from 2 rows up. Before Jasmine even understood what was happening, Vanessa was standing over her. "You need to sit perfectly still. This isn't a playground." Jasmine froze, her eyes wide. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I was just looking out the window." "Sit still," Vanessa repeated, each word sharp as a slap. Jasmine didn't move another muscle. She sat rigidly in her seat, barely breathing, holding Mr. Hopper so tight her knuckles would have been white if you could see them. Behind her she could still hear the Hartford children running and laughing. But apparently that was fine. Only she had to sit still. Then meal service began. First class on Skyward Airlines was known for its premium dining experience. Vanessa brought out meals with elaborate presentation describing each dish like a server at a five-star restaurant. For the Hartford children, "Here you go, sweethearts. I have chicken fingers and mac and cheese for you. And look, a special dessert with chocolate sauce. Doesn't that look yummy?" For George Patterson, "Your prime rib, sir, cooked medium rare just the way you like it, with roasted vegetables and garlic mashed potatoes. Bon appetit." For Richard Brennan, "Pan-seared salmon with lemon butter sauce, Mr. Brennan. I remembered it's your favorite." Each meal was presented with a flourish, a smile, a warm comment. Then Vanessa reached Jasmine's row. Her expression changed instantly. Without a word, without even looking at Jasmine directly, she slapped down a tray on the seat table. Jasmine looked down at it. It was a standard economy meal. A prepackaged sandwich, a small bag of chips, and an apple. The plastic wrapper was still on it. Nothing like what everyone else had received. This wasn't even a first-class meal. Jasmine glanced at the elaborate plates the Hartford children had, then back at her wrapped sandwich. Confused, she spoke up quietly. "Excuse me, I think this might be the wrong meal the other kids got." "You get what you get," Vanessa cut her off sharply. "Be grateful." From across the aisle, Richard Brennan's voice rang out, loud enough for half the cabin to hear. Probably used to food stamps anyway. Laughter rippled through the first-class cabin. George Patterson chuckled. Linda Patterson nodded knowingly, as if Brennan had made a perfectly reasonable observation. Jasmine didn't know what food stamps were. She was 10 years old. But she knew from the laughter, from the tone, from the way people were looking at her, that it was meant to hurt. And it did. Tears pricked at her eyes. She stared down at her wrapped sandwich, her appetite completely gone. She didn't eat. She just sat there, trying to make herself as small as possible, wishing she could disappear. From her seat in row 4, Patricia Hayes finally spoke up. "That's completely inappropriate. She's a child." Several passengers turned to glare at her. The laughter stopped, but not because they felt ashamed. They were annoyed that someone had dared to challenge their fun. Patricia said nothing more. She'd made her token objection, but she wasn't willing to push further. She looked away. And Jasmine sat there, alone, humiliated, and utterly confused about what she'd done to deserve this treatment. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Another hour passed. Jasmine hadn't had anything to drink since before boarding. Her throat was dry, her lips felt parched. The wrap sandwich sat untouched on her tray table, and there had been no beverage with it. She pressed the call button again. Waited. Watched as Vanessa moved through the cabin, refilling drinks for other passengers, chatting, laughing. Never once looking in Jasmine's direction, even though the call light above her seat was clearly illuminated. Growing desperate, Jasmine finally worked up the courage to speak when Vanessa walked past her seat for the 5th time. "Please, ma'am," her voice was barely above a whisper. "May I have water?" Vanessa stopped, let out a dramatic, exaggerated sigh, and rolled her eyes as if Jasmine had just asked her to move a mountain. "Fine, wait here." The way she said it dripped with contempt, as if Jasmine could go anywhere else. She returned a few minutes later with a small plastic cup filled nearly to the brim with dark red liquid, cranberry juice. Not the water Jasmine had asked for. And she didn't set it down gently. She placed it roughly on the very edge of Jasmine's tray table. Not centered, not stable. The liquid sloshed dangerously close to the rim. Jasmine stared at the overfilled cup teetering on the edge of her tray. It wasn't water, but she was too intimidated, too beaten down by the past 2 hours to say anything. At least it was something to drink. "Thank you," she whispered. Vanessa had already walked away. Jasmine looked at the cup. It was filled so full that any movement might cause it to spill, and her hands were small. And she was nervous. Very carefully, she reached for it with both hands, trying to steady the cup as she lifted it toward her lips. And that's when it happened. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence. Just a small bump, the kind that happens on every flight. But it was enough. The cup tilted. Cranberry juice splashed forward, some landing on Jasmine's tray and soaking into her unicorn shirt. But the majority of it sprayed forward, right onto Vanessa, who had been leaning over the seat in front to collect a tray. Red liquid splattered across Vanessa's pristine white uniform, her sleeve, her chest, dark stains spreading across the fabric. "I'm so sorry," Jasmine gasped, her voice panicked. "I'm so sorry. The plane moved and I didn't mean to. Please, I'm sorry." But Vanessa wasn't listening. Her face went bright red with rage. Her eyes locked onto Jasmine with pure hatred. "You little," she started, her voice shaking with fury. "Look what you did." "I didn't mean to." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, please." The plane bumped. "I'm sorry." And that's when Vanessa's hand came up. The slap happened so fast, so unexpectedly, that Jasmine didn't even have time to flinch. The crack echoed through the cabin. Jasmine's head snapped to the side. Pain exploded across her cheek. Mr. Hoppers fell from her lap to the floor. The overturned cup clattered after him. And then there was silence. Complete, shocked silence. Except for one sound. A 10-year-old girl beginning to cry. Not just cry, sob. The kind of sobbing that comes from fear and pain and complete betrayal of trust. Vanessa stood over her, hand still raised, breathing hard, red juice dripping from her uniform. "That's what happens when you can't behave. Throwing drinks at crew members." "I didn't throw it," Jasmine sobbed, her hand pressed to her burning cheek. "The plane bumped. I didn't throw it. I didn't." But nobody was listening. Because George Patterson was already nodding in approval. Well, she shouldn't have thrown her drink. Children today have no discipline. And Richard Brennan was adding, "Finally someone puts their foot down. These people need to learn there are consequences for their behavior." These people? A 10-year-old girl had just been struck in the face by an adult. And instead of outrage, instead of horror, these passengers were defending it, approving it. Because to them, Jasmine wasn't a scared child who'd had an accident. She was these people. She was someone who needed to be put in her place. The Hartford parents pulled their children closer, whispering, "See, that's why you behave on planes." Robert, the older flight attendant who'd witnessed everything, did nothing. Stood there silently, a slight nod of approval toward Vanessa. Jessica, the young flight attendant, looked horrified but frozen, too afraid to contradict a senior crew member. Only Patricia Hayes moved. She stood up from her seat, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Oh my God, she's 10 years old. You just hit a child." But others shot back at her. "Stay out of it, lady. The attendant knows what she's doing." Child needed to learn respect. And through it all, Jasmine sat there, hand pressed to her stinging cheek, tears streaming down her face, sobbing the same words over and over. "I want my daddy. Please, I want my daddy. I didn't mean to spill it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Vanessa stood over her, righteous indignation all over her face. "She assaulted a crew member. That's a federal offense. I could have her arrested when we land." A federal offense. She was threatening to have a 10-year-old child arrested for spilling juice during turbulence. Jasmine could barely breathe through her tears. "I didn't. The plane bumped. I didn't throw it." But several passengers were already pulling out their phones. Not all of them agreed with what had just happened. Some were recording, documenting, knowing that what they just witnessed was beyond wrong. Patricia Hayes knelt beside Jasmine's seat, her phone already out, calling a number she'd found on Jasmine's unaccompanied minor paperwork. 300 miles away, in that Chicago boardroom, Marcus Richardson's phone began to ring. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to comment below. What would you do if you witnessed an adult hitting a child on a plane? Would you intervene? Would you record it? Or would you stay silent like most of those passengers did? And if you want to see what happens when this little girl's father finds out what was done to his daughter, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because Marcus Richardson is about to walk onto that plane, and when he does, the entire airline industry is going to feel it. The slap had been delivered. Jasmine's tears were falling. And Vanessa's entire world was about to come crashing down. She just didn't know it yet. Let me take you back to that moment. The moment everything changed. Jasmine reached for the cup of cranberry juice with both small hands. It was filled to the brim, placed carelessly on the edge of her tray. She had to be so careful. Slowly, she lifted it toward her lips. And then the plane jolted. Just a small bump, normal turbulence. But it was enough. The cup tipped. Cranberry juice splashed forward, onto Jasmine's shirt, her tray, and directly onto Vanessa's pristine white uniform as she leaned over the seat in front. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The plane moved and Jasmine's voice was pure panic. Vanessa spun around. Her face went red with rage. "You little... Look what you did." "I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Please, I'm sorry." Jasmine was already crying, terrified, and then Vanessa's hand came up. Crack! The slap echoed through first class like a gunshot. Jasmine's head snapped to the side. She fell back against the window, hand flying to her cheek. Mr. Hoppers tumbled to the floor. And then came the sobs. Deep, terrified, the crying of a child who doesn't understand what just happened. "That's what happens when you can't behave. Throwing drinks at crew members," Vanessa shouted. "I didn't throw it," Jasmine sobbed. "The plane bumped. I didn't throw it." A red handprint was already forming on her dark skin, and that's when the passengers revealed who they really were. George Patterson nodded with approval. "Well, she shouldn't have thrown her drink. Children today have no discipline." Linda Patterson agreed. "In my day, children knew better than to act out on airplanes." Richard Brennan actually smiled. "Finally someone puts their foot down. These people need to learn there are consequences." "These people." The Hartford parents whispered to their children. "See, that's why you behave on planes." Robert, the older flight attendant, did nothing, just gave Vanessa a nod of approval. Jessica looked horrified but frozen, too scared to intervene. Then Patricia Hayes stood up. "Oh my God, she's 10 years old. You just hit a child." Other passengers turned on her immediately. "Stay out of it, lady. The attendant knows what she's doing." Child needed to learn respect. Patricia ignored them and knelt beside Jasmine. "Honey, it's okay. It was an accident. You did nothing wrong." Jasmine was beyond consolation. "I want my daddy. Please, I want my daddy. I didn't mean to spill it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Vanessa doubled down. "She assaulted a crew member. That's a federal offense. I could have her arrested." Patricia pulled out her phone, recording the handprint, the tears, the evidence. Other passengers in back rows were recording too. They knew this was wrong. Patricia found the emergency contact number and dialed. 300 miles away, Marcus Richardson was mid-presentation when his phone vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times. Something made him answer. Marcus Richardson. "Mr. Richardson? My name is Patricia Hayes. I'm on your daughter's flight." "Sir, a flight attendant just struck your daughter across the face." The world stopped. "What did you just say?" "Your daughter spilled juice during turbulence. The flight attendant slapped her hard. She has a handprint on her face." In the background, Marcus heard it. His daughter's voice, terrified. "Daddy? Daddy, help me? Put my daughter on the phone. Now. Daddy?" Jasmine's voice was breaking. "Baby girl, Daddy's here. Tell me exactly what happened." Through sobs. "The plane bumped, and my juice spilled on the lady and she hit me, Daddy, and I said sorry but she hit me and everyone is saying I'm bad but I didn't mean to." "Stop. Listen to me. You are not bad. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand me? Nothing wrong. But Daddy, the juice was an accident. Accidents happen. Adults do not hit children, ever." Marcus got Patricia back on the phone. She told him everything. The discrimination from boarding, the denied service, the food stamp comment, the slap, the passengers defending it. "How bad is the mark?" "You can see the outline of fingers. Who else witnessed this?" "At least 6 of us are recording. Multiple videos." "Stay with my daughter. I'm making calls." Marcus hung up. 20 executives watched as their CEO transformed as something they'd never seen. A father whose child had been hurt. First call. To his assistant, voice deadly calm. "Sarah, clear my schedule. Everything. Get my legal team on the phone. Now, get me the Skyward Airlines CEO's direct line." Second call. To his security chief, "James, I need full background on Skyward Flight 447's crew. Every complaint ever filed against the lead flight attendant. I want it in 30 minutes. Third call. His attorney, "Mike, someone just assaulted my 10-year-old daughter on a plane. Federal charges. I want them destroyed." Fourth call. Skyward Customer Service. "Connect me to your CEO." "Sir, I can't." "Let me be very clear. You will connect me to your CEO in 60 seconds. Or I call the Wall Street Journal and CNN and explain how your airline allowed a child to be assaulted." 60 seconds. He was transferred to a mid-level manager who tried to stall. "Sir, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding. Your flight attendant struck my 10-year-old daughter in the face. There's video evidence. Now get me someone with authority, or I'm calling my lawyers in the FAA. Sir, we'll need to investigate. Fine. Let me introduce myself. My name is Marcus Richardson. I'm the CEO of Vanguard Equity Partners. We own 40% of Skyward Airlines voting shares. We control your board. Now, do I have your attention? Dead silence. Then frantic. Mr. Richardson, please hold for our CEO. Elizabeth Chen came on, voice stressed. Mr. Richardson, I was just informed. I am absolutely horrified. Here's what's going to happen. That flight attendant gets confined away from my daughter immediately. Chicago PD meets the plane. I want full video footage from every aircraft camera. And I want every single person who defended that assault fired. Am I understood? Yes, I understand. Marcus hung up and opened the report from his security chief. Vanessa Peterson, 20 years with Skyward, 127 complaints, 31 involving racial discrimination, 12 involving children, 8 involving physical aggression. Every single complaint dismissed as unfounded. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a pattern they'd ignored for 2 decades. Marcus's hands tightened on his phone. His daughter hadn't just been assaulted by one racist flight attendant. She'd been failed by an entire system. And that system was about to collapse. How many complaints does it take before a company is responsible? Drop a comment below, because 127 complaints were ignored before a 10-year-old got slapped. If you want to see what happens when this father walks onto that plane, subscribe right now. Because Marcus Richardson is about to bring down an empire. Justice was coming. Fast. While Marcus mobilized from the ground, Vanessa marched to the cockpit with her version of events. Captain Davis, we have a situation. That unaccompanied minor threw her drink at me, then became hysterical when I corrected her behavior. I had to physically restrain her for safety. Captain Davis walked to first class expecting a disruptive child. What he found was a 10-year-old with a handprint on her face, clutching a stuffed bunny, crying softly. This wasn't disruptive. This was terrified. Patricia stood immediately. Captain, I witnessed everything. That child accidentally spilled during turbulence and this flight attendant struck her. I have video. So do we, 2 other passengers called out. The captain watched the footage. Turbulence. Accidental spill. Jasmine's immediate apology. Then the slap. Clear. Undeniable. Assault. George Patterson protested. That video doesn't show what happened before. The child was trouble from the start. Captain Davis knelt to Jasmine's level. Sweetheart, can you tell me what happened? Through tears. The plane bumped and my cup spilled and I said sorry, but she hit me and it hurt and I didn't mean to. The captain stood, his voice iron. Vanessa Peterson, you're confined to the crew rest area immediately. No passenger contact. Captain, I was just... Now. He turned to Robert. You witnessed this and did nothing? You're suspended. Within minutes, the captain was on the phone with CEO Chen. Ma'am, a flight attendant assaulted an unaccompanied minor, 10 years old, visible handprint, multiple witnesses, video evidence. Get me everything. I'm contacting Chicago PD and the FAA. FAA notification went out, federal assault on aircraft, child victim. Chicago PD contacted. Officers would board on landing. Jessica photographed Jasmine's injury, provided first aid, hands shaking. I'm so sorry. I should have done something sooner. Patricia stayed with Jasmine. Your daddy is so proud of you. You're so brave. George Patterson and Richard Brennan tried giving statements defending Vanessa. Captain Davis cut them off. Anything you say may be used in criminal proceedings. Save it for the police. Their faces went pale. In the crew area, Vanessa sat with Robert, convinced they were victims. This is ridiculous. I was just doing my job. Marcus left his boardroom without explanation. His car was waiting. Security had arranged expedited gate access. As he raced to O'Hare, his phone buzzed with the security report. Vanessa Peterson, 127 complaints over 20 years, 31 involving racial discrimination, 12 involving children, 8 involving physical aggression. Every single one dismissed. Marcus's knuckles went white, gripping his phone. This woman had been terrorizing black passengers, especially children, for 2 decades, and Skyward had protected her. CEO Chen called with updates. Marcus's voice was ice. That woman is fired before the plane lands, and everyone who ignored 127 complaints, they're done too. He checked the flight tracker obsessively. Still 30 minutes out. 30 minutes until he could hold his daughter. On the plane, Jasmine asked quietly, "Will my daddy be mad at me?" Patricia smiled. "Honey, he's not mad at you. He's mad for you." The plane began its descent. Below, an army waited. Chicago PD, corporate executives, legal teams, and one very dangerous father. Wheels touched down. The plane taxied. "Ladies and gentlemen, remain seated. Law enforcement will board first." The door opened. Police officers entered. Skyward, executives followed. And then Marcus Richardson. Every head turned. Tall, powerful, expensive suit, face set in stone. Eyes scanning the cabin with laser focus. "Daddy!" Jasmine's voice cracked with relief. Marcus moved through first class like a force of nature. Passengers parted instinctively. He reached Jasmine and knelt, gently examining her face. The handprint was still there, clear on her brown skin. His jaw clenched. "I'm here, baby girl. Daddy's here now. You're safe." Jasmine broke down completely. "Daddy, I was good. I promise I was good. I didn't mean to spill." Marcus pulled her close, careful and protective. I know you were good, and nothing about this was your fault." She sobbed into his shoulder while he held her, whispering reassurances. George Patterson muttered, "Finally, maybe now we can." Marcus's head turned, eyes locking onto him with a look that could freeze fire. "If I were you, I would not say another word." Patterson's mouth snapped shut. Marcus stood, lifting Jasmine into his arms. She wrapped her arms around his neck, face buried in his shoulder. He looked at Patricia. "Thank you for protecting my daughter. I only did what anyone should have done, but you're the only one who did." His gaze swept over the passengers who defended the assault. "I won't forget that." He turned to the police. "I'm Marcus Richardson. This is my daughter Jasmine. I want to press full charges. Assault of a minor, child endangerment, everything applicable." "Understood, sir." Marcus looked at the Skyward executives. "Where is she?" "Confined in the crew rest area, Mr. Richardson." "I want to see her." "Sir, I don't think." "That wasn't a request." They nodded nervously. "What would you say to someone who assaulted your child?" Comment below. And if you want to see what happens when Marcus comes face to face with Vanessa, subscribe right now. Because what happens next is legendary. At the gate, police went to work immediately. Photographs of Jasmine's injury from multiple angles. The handprint documented in detail. Her juice-stained clothes collected as evidence. Patricia gave her detailed statement. 2 other passengers corroborated every word. Video evidence was handed over, multiple angles, crystal clear. Then they went for Vanessa. She was led out of the crew rest area in handcuffs, still protesting. "She assaulted me, look at my uniform." The police officer's response was flat. "Ma'am, you're being charged with assault of a minor. You have the right to remain silent." Vanessa's face went from indignant to pale in seconds. Robert was questioned next. When asked why he didn't intervene, he admitted, "I didn't think it was that serious." His own biases on full display. Marcus stood holding Jasmine, watching it all unfold. Then he turned to George Patterson. His voice was low, dangerous. "You defended someone hitting my child, a 10-year-old child. Remember that when you see yourself on the news." George blustered. "Now see here, you can't threaten." "That wasn't a threat, that's a promise. Your face is in multiple videos defending child abuse. Good luck with that." Richard Brennan tried to slip past. Marcus blocked his path. "I know who you are, Mr. Brennan. Your employer will receive full video of your comments by tomorrow morning." Brennan went white. The Hartford family tried to leave quietly. Patricia called them out. "You said nothing. You let a child be hurt and said nothing." CEO Elizabeth Chen arrived, visibly distressed, approaching Marcus to apologize. "Not here. Not in front of my daughter. Conference room. Now." Patricia hugged Jasmine gently before leaving. "She's a special girl. You raised her right. This wasn't her fault." As Marcus carried Jasmine through the terminal, she asked quietly, "Daddy, why were those people so mean to me? What did I do?" Marcus's heart broke. "How do you explain racism to a 10-year-old? Baby, you did nothing wrong. Some people are just cruel and wrong, and Daddy's gonna make sure they can't hurt anyone else." In an airport conference room, the reckoning began. CEO Chen, Legal Team, HR Director Kenneth Price, Operations VP Thomas Bradford, Regional Manager Patricia Walsh. Marcus entered with Jasmine, still holding her hand. He sat her next to him. She clutched Mr. Hopper's. The handprint was still visible on her face. His strategy was deliberate. Make them look at her. See the real victim, not some abstract incident report. The videos played, every angle of the assault. Jasmine's fear, Vanessa's violence, the racist passengers cheering it on. Then Marcus's team presented Vanessa's complaint history on screen, 20 years of ignored warnings. Marcus spoke, his voice controlled but lethal. Vanessa Peterson has worked for you for 20 years. In that time, she has had 127 complaints. 31 mentioned racial discrimination. 12 involved mistreatment of children. 8 involved physical aggression. Every single one dismissed as unfounded. And today, she assaulted my 10-year-old daughter while passengers cheered. So here's my question. Who allowed this to happen? Silence. Kenneth Price tried to defend himself. Mr. Richardson, I understand you're upset, but complaints are often exaggerated. Marcus's fury exploded. Exaggerated? Look at my daughter's face. There's a handprint on her face. She's 10 years old. What part is exaggerated? Patricia Walsh attempted damage control. In Vanessa's defense, passengers can be difficult. She's 10. She spilled juice during turbulence. That's your definition of difficult? Thomas Bradford offered weakly. We'll discipline the employee involved. Marcus laughed coldly. Discipline? She's already arrested. She's going to prison. My question is, what happens to all of you who enabled her for 2 decades? CEO Chen spoke up. Mr. Richardson is right. This is systemic failure. We protected an employee over passengers, over children. Marcus laid out his demands. Vanessa Peterson, fired immediately. Robert Chen, fired for complicity. Patricia Walsh, fired for dismissing complaints. Kenneth Price, fired for tolerating racism. Thomas Bradford, resign or I force a board vote. Some executives called it excessive, said they should wait for investigation. Marcus's voice cut through. I don't need your agreement. I control 40% of voting shares. I can remove everyone in this room. The only question is whether you leave quietly or I make this public. That video is going viral regardless. The question is whether Skyward takes action or protects racists. The room went silent. One by one, they agreed. That evening, the video leaked online. Within hours, Justice for Jasmine was trending worldwide. Every major network picked it up. Child assaulted in first class. Airline's pattern of racism exposed. In their hotel suite, Jasmine asked her father and grandmother, Daddy, why did that lady hate me? She didn't even know me. Marcus gave her an age-appropriate explanation of racism, prejudice, judging people by skin color instead of character. Jasmine's response was simple wisdom. That's stupid. Mr. Hoppers doesn't care what color people are. Marcus's daughter was teaching basic human decency that adults refused to learn. The news showed the video on repeat. Vanessa's mugshot. The racist passengers being identified. George Patterson, retired banker, local businesses dropped him from their boards. Richard Brennan, senior VP at a consulting firm, placed on immediate leave. The Hartford family's privacy was protected, but they faced criticism for their silence. Skyward announced immediate terminations and policy review. CEO Chen issued a public apology specifically to Jasmine. Stock dropped 15% in after-hours trading. Boycott calls trended, and then other victims came forward. Dozens of people sharing similar experiences with Vanessa. The pattern was undeniable. 3 months later, Vanessa stood trial, charged with felony assault of a minor, child endangerment, filing a false report. Her defense claimed she felt threatened by Jasmine's aggressive behavior. The video made that defense impossible. The prosecution showed the footage, the complaint history, the pattern of racial animus. Jasmine testified via video to avoid courtroom trauma. Calm, clear, consistent. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Sentence: 2 years incarceration, 3 years probation, anger management, permanent criminal record. Robert took a plea deal for failure to report child abuse. Lost his aviation certifications, probation. Skyward settled with the Richardson family for $18 million and established the Jasmine Richardson Child Safety and Equality Fund. Corporate accountability came swift. Patricia Walsh fired, reputation destroyed. Kenneth Price forced to resign, HR career over. Thomas Bradford resigned, replaced by diversity-focused leadership. 12 other employees who dismissed complaints were terminated. The FAA mandated bias training, enhanced protections for unaccompanied minors, mandatory investigation of discrimination complaints. Congress passed the Airline Passenger Protection Act with specific provisions for children and penalties for discrimination. One 10-year-old's voice had changed an entire industry. Jasmine worked with a child psychologist, processing the trauma and racism's impact. She gave a presentation at school about standing up against injustice and prejudice. She did a children's news interview with a poised message about treating everyone with kindness. She received thousands of letters from children and families who'd experienced discrimination, thanking her for giving them a voice. Her science project on creating fair systems won the state competition. She still got anxious sometimes in public spaces, still working through it. But she was growing stronger. She recognized she wasn't to blame, that speaking up had created change. Her bond with her father deepened. He taught her about resilience, legacy, using privilege and voice for others. And Mr. Hopper's? Still her comfort. But now also a symbol of survival and courage. 6 months later, Marcus and Jasmine stood at a different airport. Family vacation to visit grandmother. Different airline, chosen for the highest safety and equality ratings. Jasmine had been involved in the selection. First-class tickets again. Marcus had asked if she wanted economy instead. Jasmine's response? I shouldn't have to hide. First class is for everyone. At check-in, the young black woman at the desk saw Jasmine's name and did a double take. You're Jasmine Richardson. Jasmine nodded shyly, holding her father's hand. Because of you, I got better training. We all did. You made it safer for kids like you. Thank you. Jasmine's simple response, I just wanted people to be nice. Boarding first class, the flight attendant greeted everyone warmly. Jasmine watched how she treated all passengers equally. They found their seats, 2A and 2B. Jasmine at the window, Marcus on the aisle. Another unaccompanied minor passed, a young black boy, maybe 8, looking nervous. Jasmine spoke up as he passed. Hey, first time alone? It's okay. The flight attendants are really nice on this plane, and if you need anything, just press the button, they'll help you. The boy smiled, his confidence visibly growing. Thanks. Marcus watched his daughter, who'd survived trauma, now helping others face their fears. As they prepared for takeoff, Jasmine looked out the window, Mr. Hopper's in her lap, a slight smile on her face. Daddy, I'm glad we didn't let that mean lady make me afraid to fly. Marcus smiled. I'm glad too, baby girl. You're braver than most adults I know. The flight attendant came by with drinks. Jasmine politely said, apple juice, please. Thank you. The attendant's warm, genuine response. The difference was visible. Jasmine Richardson was 10 years old when she learned that hatred exists even in first class. That some adults hurt children. That skin color makes some people treat you as less than human. But she also learned that speaking truth matters. That justice is possible. That courage changes systems. She learned she deserves to take up space without shrinking to make others comfortable. One little girl's voice didn't just change an airline. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.